Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show, Week 8 Waiver Wire Edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great, and it's a great day to get those fantasy rosters right ahead of another week of must-win matchups because let's face it, we're trying to win every single game out there. I don't care if you're 0-7 or 7-0, we are focused on the one big prize, and that is simply getting on to Week 9. Of course, to do all that, though, I need to have, one of the best in the business by my side, and we have her in the house here, Kendall Valenzuela. What's up, K-Dog?
Ian, what's up? It's Bye-Mageddon. We got 2 Monday Night Football games tonight that I hope we have no injuries from because we deserve the carnage to stop. But yeah, we're just getting ready for the waiver wire run. I have some pretty good names this week, but yeah, the 6 teams on a bye. Hopefully people were preparing for that. So we're ready to go.
I do like some of the names we got going this week. Sometimes, let's face it, Kendall, it is, really dumpster diving there on the streets, but had some injuries, had some big time performances that, again, we are taking attention to. So accordingly, let's get after it. It's time for our DraftKings opening lines. As always, we are recording this late Monday afternoon. If you're joining us live, thank you and what's up. But yes, I'm sure some stuff will continue to break right after we're done recording, Kendall. But as things stand right now, still several nuggets to get to, especially at the quarterback position. We do have Panthers QB Bryce Young diagnosed with a high ankle sprain. He is tentatively not expected to suit up this Sunday. That means the Red Rocket himself, Andy Dalton, should be under center. So Kendall didn't exactly see, the best performance out of Dalton last year, but we haven't exactly seen the best performance out of Bryce Young either for the majority of his NFL career. So I really don't think we're going to need to overly downgrade anyone in the ranks. But also, let's face it, other than Oronde Gadsden, we don't really feel great about playing anyone in Carolina as it is.
Yeah, it's one of those things where Adam Ronis and I were talking this morning about it on Sirius XM because that news broke that maybe we were going to have Bryce Young for sure this week. And then I saw a timeline need of maybe like 2 to 4. So yeah, I'm not downgrading anyone significantly because I don't, no offense to Bryce Young, I don't think he was exactly putting up the biggest fantasy boost for us for our receivers and anyone on that offense. So I think Andy Dalton, though, is one where you come in, he completed 4-7 passes, 60 yards after you replaced him on the season, 9-4-13, 118 yards and a touchdown. So we haven't gotten much out of him, but I do think, I'm going to keep steady with the rankings. I know you're coming out with yours here pretty soon. And so I think for Oronde Gadsden, that's really the guy that you're looking at. And then the running backs are a little bit different there. But yeah, I'm not necessarily downgrading anyone because of this.
Unfortunately, with those running backs, head coach Dave Canales did confirm the Panthers are expected to continue using both Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard in tandem. They're winning football games. I understand why NFL teams do it, but it'd be cool if they put our fantasy rosters first in their priorities, maybe one day, Kendall. Commanders quarterback Jaden Daniels dealing with a hamstring injury that is, quote, not significant or long-term per head coach Dan Quinn. However, his status is still in question for Monday night against the Chiefs. So situation where we're probably going to have to be going up until kickoff. Hopefully we hear before, Saturday afternoon what Daniel's final status is. My best piece of advice for Jaden Daniels fantasy managers is to go ahead and just have Marcus Mariota roster behind him because he actually has been quite good in his extended appearances over these past 2 seasons when Daniels has been banged up. So otherwise, bad news on this one, Kendall. I don't want to overreact because it is only Monday, but Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson not practicing on Monday following the bye. Again, maybe they're just waiting for Wednesday, get his normal week of practice, 2 extra days, not push anything, but would have been a lot cooler if he was out there to start the week.
Yeah, I don't get this, Ian. Maybe it is like the Wednesday thing because we know the Wednesday practice reports are important, and then obviously Thursday, Fridays. Those are the ones we look at the most for any team going into the week. But Lamar coming off the bye, I would have just thought that maybe you want to get out there, get back up to speed a little bit, get ready to go. But you can't be excited about it yet. So I think it's the same thing that you just said about Jaden Daniels. If you already had Lamar Jackson, you just kept your backup quarterback. Hopefully you were able to keep whoever you picked up, or hopefully they're not on a bye going into this week, but just have someone behind him because Ian, it would blow my mind if he wasn't ready to go because this is the team that's sitting 4th in the AFC North right now, sitting at 1-4. So you think that they have to win out. They have to at least win, the next handful of games here to even be considered, good to go for the playoffs. So I think that means all hands on deck, and that would obviously be Lamar Jackson. So if he can't go, I would shake my head, but yeah, always have a backup plan ready just in case.
It is a nice schedule stretch for the Ravens coming out of the bye. Again, a reason why I was saying if you could have a chance of buying, not low because he's Derrick Henry, but buying relatively high, not as high as usual,
Yeah.
could make sense to get the Bears, Dolphins, Vikings, Browns, Jets, Bengals, Steelers, and Bengals all the way through mid-December. So we'll see what goes on there. I'm sure we'll continue to get plenty of Lamar-related updates throughout the week. Also, know Falcons quarterback Michael Penix dealing with a bone bruise in his foot. He is considered day-to-day. Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel confirmed that Tua is still the starter. Boo, Tua currently playing the worst football of his entire career in terms of EPA per dropback, guys. Even going back to the pre-Mike McDaniel days, cannot stress how rough it has become to watch Tua play football. And then finally, Jets head coach Aaron Glenn said he has not decided who is going to be his quarterback yet. It will, of course, be between Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor, but unfortunately, given the fact that we now know he is willing to bench Fields, even if we do find out it's going to be Fields out there, going to be tough to overly rely on him because, again, who knows how long he's actually going to be making it out there. Over in the running back streets, pain, Kendall, pure pain because Saints running back Kendre Miller, someone who we have been hyping up for a month at this point, torn ACL and out for the season. Also, the Saints are expecting to lose their starting center, Eric McCoy, to a torn biceps for the entire season as well. So more work for Alvin Kamara. Bless up Kendre Miller, get healthy. It's going to be Devin Neal in the meantime. But again, it's not like workload has been the biggest problem for Kamara in the first place, Kendall. It's been the efficiency involved, career low numbers in yards per carry, in yards per reception. And now when you lose your starting center, I just don't see those necessarily going up in the near term.
Yeah, no, and he's not catching passes either. That's the other thing that we've always banked on, right? We're like, oh, okay, well, at least Alvin Kamara is going to catch passes, and that's going to be totally fine. But he's not even doing that. So I think I'm not going to push as hard, right, for Devin Neal. Someone asked me that today, and they said, okay, are we going to go as hard for Devin Neal as we did for Kendre Miller? And it's like, no, it's not the same. It's just really not. Kendre Miller and the usage and the utilization looked so good, especially every single week it got better. So you're looking at Alvin Kamara, and he was in the losers column this week when we talked about him on Fantasy Life, 5.9 fantasy points, and just limited scoring upside. So it is going to be Kamara. If you have him, you might just continue to roll with him, but not going to push for Neal as much as we were pushing for Kendre Miller. Unless we see something change, which maybe could happen there, but we'd have to see it first before saying you should go out and get him.
Not all handcuffs are created equal. And actually, as confident as I was with Kendre Miller being a clear-cut next man up and probably assuming a full workhorse role if something did happen to Kamara, I don't share that for Devin Neal. And I don't even share that for Travion Henderson at this point, Kendall. We have Mike Vrabel ask why Henderson only played 9 snaps, and his response was, quote, it's just kind of how it played out. So, again, just one of the most disappointing fantasy football players of the year. I actually quantified this in the tweet earlier, looking at the biggest drop-offs in rank versus ADP, and only Caleb Johnson has actually had a lower rank this year among the top 36 fantasy running backs. So that sucks. And again, the fact that we're seeing Terrell Jennings now actually closing out games for them, you guys do not need to keep Travion Henderson on these fantasy rosters, as sad as that is to say out loud in week freaking 8. Also, no Chargers running back Hassan Haskins dealing with a hamstring injury. Did not practice on Monday ahead of Thursday Night Football. Could be even more work for Kamani Vidal. Last few notes, Raiders head coach Pete Carroll said both Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers should be back on the field following the team's week 8 bye. Great news there. Darren Waller dealing with a pec strain, not a torn pec, so that is good news. Still considered week to week, but should not require surgery. David Njoku considered day to day. If he does miss time again, going to be wheels up for Harold Fannin, the tight end 5 in my way too early week 8 rankings. But again, that is contingent on Njoku continuing to miss time. And also note that for you all trying to get some wins on Monday night, both Mike Evans and Emeka Egbuka are going to be playing. Kendall, we love watching Emeka Egbuka play, but I don't know, maybe chill for a week. Really make sure that hamstring is okay. What are we doing here?
This is really I've had to sit with this today for the last 20 minutes whenever we got this news, because Ian, usually we talk about we say, okay, if the coaches and the player believes that he's good to go out there, then we need to trust him the same. But I'm really not feeling that way right now about Emeka Egbuka. I'm a little bit worried about this. If you have him, it was more than likely that you had other options in these games tonight. And these are two really good, we've got the doubleheader, so you could have someone for Houston, Seattle. You could have been waiting with Emeka Egbuka, had maybe someone else from the Buccaneers or someone else from the Lions ready to go. So, I mean, if you waited, I don't know if I had the option that I would be starting him tonight. But again, I throw the same question back to you. We always say, and I always lean on the side of, if the player says he's ready to go and the coaches also believe they're ready to go, why should I not then believe? But this one seems, based on the reporting that we got last week, this one seems so not random, but it just seems like it was not in the cards. And now here we are that he's ready to go and he's going to get the start tonight. What would you do?
We did see that one game earlier this year where I think actually Schefter was right, where he was playing through a little bit of an injury and he actually did have limited snaps out there. So look, it's Monday night at this point. So if you guys have probably already made your plans, go ahead and shoot him out there. I'm playing him over the other backup wide receivers at this point. So again, I highly doubt you have a better option. Just unfortunate. I mean, Ibuka obviously as tough as they come. He played through, he had a midseason tightrope surgery in 2023. Honestly, it was a big reason why I think he came back for his senior season in the first place. Didn't have the kind of numbers he was hoping to get there. Kyle McCord under center didn't help, as all my fellow Columbus, Ohio natives know. But again, just a situation where I hope they do know more than us, Kendall. We are not doctors, couldn't quite finish those last few courses and everything. Otherwise, what could have been. But hopefully Ibuka and hopefully the Bucs know what they're doing. Just, again, scary stuff with the history of some of these soft tissue injuries. But on the other hand, maybe he goes out there, balls out, and is healthy. One can dream. Final note, unfortunately, Chiefs' second-round defensive tackle, Omar Normal-Lott, tore his ACL. Not going to help the Chiefs at the line of scrimmage. Also dealing with now, several offensive line injuries as well. So get healthy soon, KC, and everyone else for that matter. This has been our DraftKings opening lines. Big games, big moments, and even bigger upside this week. I've teamed up with DraftKings Pick 6 to give you a new way to get in on the action. With Pick 6, you ride the upside by making simple predictions. Will a player score more or less than the number listed? You put your picks together, and the more you hit, the bigger your payout. And right now, guys, there is an incredible offer. New DraftKings Pick 6 customers play $5 or more on your first pick set and get $50 back in bonus picks. That's right. New customers play $5 on your first entry, and you'll get $50 in bonus picks instantly. So don't miss your shot to ride the upside. Download DraftKings Pick 6. Get in on all the action and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. Thanks to DraftKings Pick 6 for sponsoring this. Let's make this season one to remember. It's Monday here on the Fantasy Life Show, which means it's time for the Waiver Wire Market Watch presented by the fine folks at Pristine Auction. Our top 3 recommended waiver wire ads of the week, of course, depending on your roster. But again, we are here to help. And so is K-Dog in the form of the written word in the year 2025. You get this out late on Sunday, Kendall. You are truly doing God's work out here. So again, invite everyone to check out that article where Kendall gets, into the nitty gritty for all things waiver wire. Kicking things off with a man who put up some numbers last Thursday night, which feels like forever ago, but Joe Flacco, Kendall, certainly does not seem to be that washed up veteran that he was more so resembling in Cleveland. Of course, getting through the football, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins certainly helps, but still only rostered in 5% of ESPN leagues and 12% of Yahoo leagues. And man, following 219 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Packers, 342 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Steelers. Look, not saying that he's going to be doing, Joe Burrow numbers for the whole season, but hey, 85% of Burrow, we'll take that in fantasy land.
Yeah, why not? The Bengals take on the Jets. Bengals are at home this week, so I was just looking around, and again, there aren't crazy quarterbacks that are going to be out this week when we're talking about the 6 teams on a bye. But you're still kind of looking around, and I don't know, like you said, Ian, if it's going to be the icy hot bowl every single week for Joe Flacco. But what we saw last Thursday just makes you believe and see that he has a bevy of weapons at his disposal, and one of them is Jamar Chase. And so he just said, "Screw it, Jamar Chase is down there somewhere," and if he continues to do that, we're probably going to see him put up really good numbers. It's pretty easy when you look at it. So again, we're not going to see this kind of performance week in and week out. We know that with Joe Flacco. We know that with this Bengals team overall. But I do think, he's able to put together performances like this, and he does help raise the ceiling for this team, unlike what we saw from before. We thought it was going to be a couple other guys, but it wasn't going to be Browning. And unfortunately, Joe Burrow, hopefully is going to be back, for them to maybe make a playoff push. But I really do like Joe Flacco in this start. Again, it's not going to always be pretty, but when you have talent like that on that roster, you know that he's going to be able to make those connections. So I'm very comfortable. I picked him up in a couple of leagues a couple weeks ago to just be ready for this. And you're kind of good to go with him now.
You mentioned the Jets game. After that, they get the Bears before their bye. Bears have been actually, a better defense than at least I was expecting the last few weeks, so not a layup. But after that, bye week again, and then Steelers, Patriots, Ravens, Bills, Ravens, Dolphins, and Cardinals. So not saying every single one of those is a layup, but man, if that Ravens defense isn't getting healthier and significantly better, those sure sound good. We just saw what happens against the Steelers, and even teams like the Patriots and Bills haven't exactly been immune to giving them some big performances this year. So feeling good about Flacco. Obviously, this schedule coming up was a big reason why we were recommending buying low on T. Higgins while you could last week. So yeah, hopefully his quarterback stays healthy, stays right, because things have been looking much, much better in Cincy. Also combined with just their ever horrible defense, maybe they do get Trey Hendrickson back soon, but honestly, a trade candidate as well at this point. So we'll see what happens there. As always, though, Kendall, in terms of fab on a quarterback in traditional single quarterback leagues, if you are just trying to fill the buy, I would not be going too crazy here. Again, we want to save that as much as possible for those high upside handcuff running backs that all of a sudden are rocketing up the ranks. But that said, super flex formats, guys, I was in a horrible spot where I missed out on I had Joe Burrow. He got hurt. I missed out on Jake Browning. Thank God. Didn't love it at the time, but sometimes the fantasy gods reward you there. So yeah, I went really hard into paying for Joe Flacco. I do think, Kendall, if you are looking at a situation, you lost Joe Burrow, you lost one of these other quarterbacks, stuff is looking just horrible. I'm okay spending 60, 70% of the fab. You need a quarterback to compete in these super flex leagues. And I am confident enough in Joe Flacco to think that we're going to get 2 months here of top 15, top 16 quarterback play potentially.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And you might people might be listening to this and saying, ew, there's no freaking way I'm going to spend that much money on Joe Flacco. But you just kind of look around and there's a situation where now, because I spent money on Browning, Ian, I was in such a horrible situation where I said, well, if Jake Browning's going to look like he did 2 years ago, then I want to have a piece of that because, again, we like the weapons. Obviously, that didn't work out. So now went and got Joe Flacco and he should be in line. He should be good to go and not looking over his shoulder until if we see Joe Burrow come back. There's a chance that if this team is losing, then maybe we don't see him return. So you get him the rest of the way. But yeah, it sounds gross to say it right now, but Joe Flacco is definitely someone that you can spend money on.
He might be a little closer to top 20, top 21. I was probably getting a little excited there, top 15, top 16. But hey, if you guys are like me, hey, when I get on my, treadmill to go ahead and do my waiver wire stuff every single Tuesday and Wednesday, I get to super flex, I go to quarterback, and I just see Blake Sims waving at me each and every week for what seems like the last 3 years now. So again, shout out to Blake Sims. I'm sure he's a very nice guy, but there's nothing out there. So if you do have a chance to go get your Joe Flacco, I do think it is worth it. Again, you can't be seriously trying to compete in super flex without an actual quarterback in that super flex. Moving on, Kendall, someone who we talked up last week as the tight end priority if you were looking to get one for the long term. Well, it turns out we were right about wanting to get him, but maybe wrong about the long term part because his time is now. Oronde Gadsden coming off a massive performance in week 7 and really does look the part of the next big thing at the position. So obviously in college came out as a plus receiving option. Didn't maybe give him the love he deserved as a day 3 pick. Obviously had other guys in Los Angeles that we thought could be getting the rock more. But as it stands now, Kendall, we've seen Oronde Gadsden's route rates go up each and every week over the last 5. And man, does he look good out there. So still only 2% rostered in ESPN leagues, 4% in Yahoo. Again, it's a situation where I know how it can kind of be in these tight end streets. We're in some of these leagues where Dallas Goedert is still floating around the waiver wire. So I don't think you necessarily need to blow all your fab on this dude because no, I'm not positive he's going to enter that Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, must start weekly territory. But man, if you do need a tight end, you have a chance to go get Gadsden. I'm okay spending a pretty penny, 25, 30% or so to go ahead and land this guy because clearly the upside is huge.
Yeah, I mean, he had an 88 utilization score in week 6. So you're looking at Oronde Gadsden. And like you said, Ian, I was more recommending him to stash, and it might not be a stash play, especially if you're hit by the buys this week. I mean, you're going to be without Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, Sam Laporta for week 8. So this is one where if you look around and he's there, I think he has really good long-term upside as well. This team has told us that they want to use him, and we saw that in this game. I know I was at this game, Ian, and it was one where I was so excited for the fantasy points, but the fans around me were probably why the Chargers are not winning this game. What are we doing here? And I was like, fantasy points though, everything's good. No defense in this game. But that was also the other side of it that Justin Herbert had at the season high 55 attempts. So we know that maybe they might be in trailing game scripts. I don't know, Ian. This team is always something at the beginning of the season. And then towards the middle and end, we say, wait, is this that same Chargers team? So he did have the season high 55 attempts, but I really do think Gadsden should be on all radars just because of what they were telling us about him preseason, during the season as well. Utilization has gone up every single time, and you have to pay attention to anyone that gets 7 catches for 164 yards. It does not matter. I don't think this one's a flash in the pan either. I really do think Oronde Gadsden is not to that extent every single week, but he is going to be involved in this offense.
I'm just imagining Kendall showing up to a game and just pissing everyone off by wearing a hat that just says like fantasy football, or
Fair
maybe a
point.
shirt like I'm only here to support my fantasy football team. Get that Rob
Exactly.
Lowe style going on there. So again, great stuff from Gadsden. And just can't stress enough not to throw Dallas Goedert under the bus. But as Dwayne McFarland and I were talking about on our recap pod, we'll see tight end spike week sometimes where, it's design plays. Dude gets left open. Okay. It's a play action play on the 5-yard line. And they go ahead and just, score these touchdowns. Gadsden looks like the real deal Holyfield, guys. I mean, again, that like 51-yard catch and run, drew the hold, was able to power through it, pluck the ball out of the air, big and physical enough to break some arm tackles, and also fast enough to reverse field against finely tuned athletic machines trying to take the dude down. So again, Gadsden for my way too early ranks ahead of next week. I mean, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, guys. He's coming in as my tight end 10. Honestly, I put him up there like tight end 6 or 7 in my initial kind of run. And then I was like, all right, let's chill out a little bit and give some respect to guys like Dalton Kincaid. But sounds like Darren Waller could be out, so he could be moving on up. So great stuff for Gadsden. And yes, it's going to be a crowded offense. We got McConkey, QJ, and Keenan doing their thing. But God forbid they get banged up, guys. Really could be full wheels up for Gadsden. Even as things stand, Chargers have been very willing to throw the football. Good stuff there for the rookie. Last main highlight is going to be Bears, not RB1. That is DeAndre Swift, but clear-cut RB2, Kendall. Kyle Monangai, 4% roster in ESPN leagues, only 7% in Yahoo. Look, I'm not expecting weekly standalone value like we happened to get in week 7. I do think that was mostly due to the fact that the Bears were able to get up 20 points early and also didn't have exactly the best weather there. But, man, this is a situation where throughout the whole offseason, we weren't exactly sure if it was going to be Monangai, Roshan Johnson, maybe a free agent or trade candidate. And now it really does seem like that Monangai is the clear number 2 behind DeAndre Swift, who, again, is crushing it, but is also already playing through an injury, Kendall. So, again, when you are trying to find some of these deeper league handcuff stashes, I do think Monangai deserves to be prioritized.
Yeah, Monangai is one that I've had either written up or at the very bottom of the list saying the other guys, because at some point I was like, this has to pay off eventually, kind of like Kendre Miller, which is just so sad, Ian, when we saw that news a little earlier today where I'm like, oh my gosh, of course, we don't get to celebrate Kendre Miller anymore. But yeah, Kyle Monangai is one that's kind of exciting because we've seen this. It's not to the same extent, but we know what Ben Johnson did with the Lions before, and that's kind of what we were waiting on, or seeing if that's how he was going to use these running backs. Again, it is not a David Montgomery situation here, but there is a chance that we continue to see Kyle Monangai and his usage go up. Like he had, I believe it was 46% of the 52.9% of the snaps, and played 50. That was for Swift, and then Monangai played for 45.6%. So it's all right there to me. I really like Monangai. I think he is one where, again, you said it, Ian, you stash him. You don't pick him up and just start him right away and think that this is going to happen every single time. But if we do start to get shades of what we saw in for Chicago in Detroit, with Ben Johnson over there, then you're excited. And you like the Bears' schedule. They play the Ravens and then they play the Cincinnati Bengals, both games on the road, but still, you really like that. So I think this is the time to get him, much like other situations when we talked about guys, like get him now, because after these 2 games, he might just continue to get more and more expensive, because those are really good matchups to exploit.
Giants, Vikings, Steelers up after that. I mean, hey, I think I saw a stat earlier. Bears are the only team in the league to score at least 21 points in every game this season. So maybe we haven't gotten the true Ben Johnson, fireworks that we were hoping for. And, the 3rd straight offseason championship. Bears fans out there, again, haven't been completely blowing other teams out of the water, but 4 straight wins, and the idea of them actually building some fantasy-friendly, positive game script leads out there, I do think makes some sense. So again, guys, top 3 waiver wire additions: Joe Flacco, Oronde Gadsden, and Kyle Monangai. But Kendall, I wanted to quickly throw an idea at you with that Bears schedule, looking at potentially buying low-ish on Rome Odunze. Okay, he's obviously had back-to-back duds, like 2 catches, 31 scoreless yards in these past 2 weeks. And again, guys, maybe you're scoffing at me going, no one's going to sell Odunze low. And again, maybe they won't in your league, pal. I get it. But on Yahoo, you can go and look at their trade market where these trades have actively happened today on October 20th as we record this. I saw straight up deals: Rome Odunze for Khalil Shakur, Aaron Jones, Ramondre Stevenson, Travis Etienne, and DeAndre Swift. I'm smashing accept on all of those. And Kendall, I floated this out there on Twitter, and someone was quick to say, like, okay, well, it sounds like whoever made those trades were on crack. Maybe some of your league mates are on crack, okay? So get them some help if possible, but also maybe try to go get you some Rome Odunze. I mean, again, those are some great trades, and I do think there's still an idea where, Rome Odunze, as great as he was during the first 4 weeks, maybe folks think his rookie year and those last 2 weeks are a little bit closer to what he really is. So are you in on those?
Oh, 1,000%. If someone is willing, if anyone in my league is willing right now to sell me Roma Dunze, please call me because I'm down with it, Ian. And you might like people sometimes think that that would never happen in my league, and that's why a lot of trades don't get done. Just try it, right? The worst that they can say is no, and then they could like gaslight you and make you be mean to you in the group chat, whatever it is. But at this point, like people might look at the box scores and say, well, we have not seen the same Roma Dunze for this Bears team, and they might be fed up with it. The good news is that he still led the team in targets on Sunday, and he was one target off in the week prior to leading the team as well. So the work is still there. It's just one of those situations where he hasn't come down with it. But when you look at the underlying stuff, you're kind of excited about it. So yeah, that's a really good call out. And if someone's willing to sell him at a lower price, like the ones that you named, yeah, you should get on that. And like I said, call me because I'm ready for that.
Kendall said it. Worst case, you get made fun of a little bit in the group. I mean, we've all been there. Best case, all of a sudden, the person that sold you Roma Dunze is the one getting made fun of in the group. So good stuff there, and good stuff from, again, our presenting sponsors over at Pristine Auction. Kendall, you'll like this one. We actually have a Cal Raleigh signed home run derby jersey now available on Pristine Auction. You can find this and so much more cool memorabilia on their site. And we guys actually have a very special code for you at Pristine Auction. Again, there's truly something for every fan. If you guys are actually already registered with Pristine, you can use code FANCYLIFE when you win an item to receive $25 off at checkout. And if you're a first-time user, you can register using code FL20 to get $20 in credits added to your account. And then, you're a first-time user, code FL20, $20 off. Then after you get that purchase, go ahead and use code FANCYLIFE for $25 off. I'm not a mathematician, but I'm pretty sure that means you can get $45 off in one. How about that deal? Only at Pristine Auction. Still breaking down the Week 8 waiver wire over here on the Fantasy Life Show, but wanted to kind of go into a little bit of a real or fugazi game here, Kendall, because we had some big performances last week, and we got to try to figure out now if they were worth pursuing with actual fab there on the waiver wire. So starting off, we did have Chiefs running back Rashard Smith put some pretty nice usage up there, at least relative to what we have been seeing. Had 14 carries for 39 scoreless yards. Also set career and season high marks, obviously, with 5 receptions for 42 yards. Only rostered in 3% of ESPN leagues and 6% of Yahoo leagues. How are you feeling about Rashard Smith moving forward, Kendall?
Yeah, I like this one. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, he was more involved because this was a blowout game. And I think there is some truth to that, Ian. Like, we do have to take that into consideration for the Chiefs. But we always talk about the next man up. And we did see Kareem Hunt, get a little bit banged up in this game. So Rashard Smith, to me, is someone where I've been stashing him and I've been unwilling to cut him yet. I haven't had as many injuries in the one league that I do have him, but he would be the first guy that maybe I do let go of. But I do think two things can be true at the same time. It was a blowout game for them, but I do think that he had the 14 carries, 5 receptions, 81 total yards, and I think he's going to continue to be a good stash. It's just going to be, it might be one where we will need to see an injury to see him kind of step up for this offense. But again, you're happy with that. This is a Chiefs offense too, Ian. It just looks like they're going to be fine. Like they're just probably going to go back to the Super Bowl, and we're going to laugh at the fact that they were ever 0-2 and we had questions about them and their, ability to score. So to me, I really do like Rashard Smith. So I think this is a little bit real.
So I think it's real, and from the standpoint of he looks good out there. He has some extra, explosiveness to the team. Right now, Isaiah Pacheco, I think he's at like 71 touches. Isaiah Pacheco leads the league in most touches without a gain of 20-plus yards as a rusher or receiver, okay? So he's not making big things happen on the ground. Neither is Kareem Hunt in his current state, and as Kendall said, he got really banged up at the end of that first drive, came back for a few plays in the second drive, and then we didn't see him for the rest of the game. I would not be surprised if he is missing practice here as we get into Wednesday or Thursday, I guess, because they play on Monday night. So I'm a little bit concerned about the overall usage this year because everyone wants this to be the Jerick McKinnon thing, but a little bit different, okay? Rashard Smith has not been used as a pass blocker for even one snap this year. He's also played 31 snaps in the slot or out wide and just 48 as a true running back. So I've been waiting to see them try to get away from some of that gadget usage, and they really hadn't until this last week, and it took a Kareem Hunt injury to do so. But that said, Kendall, if it did take the injury to do so and now they're willing to do it, like I can get behind that. So again, I'm a little bit just concerned about the thought of Smith actually carving out this 45, 50% snap rate on his own. But hey, if one domino has already fallen in terms of Kareem Hunt, I could see Rashard Smith, being one step closer. Shout out to Lincoln Park. So I'm going to go with Fugazi in terms of him being this, again, locked in, like, oh, we should be getting excited about it. But hey, handcuff streets and just someone who looks good on the football field, I can get behind that. Let's talk about Kayshon Boutte, someone who, Kendall, has not missed a target in 3 straight weeks. Last week, he caught both of his targets for 55 yards and a touchdown. Week before that, he was 5 for 5, 93 yards and 2 touchdowns. Week before that, he caught all 3 for 43 yards again. But again, as great as those numbers are, it's also the reality that we're talking about a guy only averaging 3.7 targets per game. So great player, Kendall. And hey, in terms of being real as a boomer bust wide receiver 4 in fantasy, I can get behind that. We love us some Drake May, but just expecting weekly fireworks here might be a bit of a tall ask. What say you?
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I wanted to like it so much as well. I was just like, oh, there has to be a way that we could say nicer things about him. And listen, he's been good. I think he offers good, flex appeal, especially this week when we talk about all these teams on a bye and maybe moving forward. Drake May looks really good for this team. And so I think that's another part of it where I do think Drake May is coming into his own and being able to sustain multiple good fantasy producers, just not necessarily high end. And that's where I think Kayshon Boutte stands because, again, you can't think that he's going to finish with the target share that he had, with the receiving yards, with the touchdowns every single week. So I think this is a little bit fake. But again, I do think that he has good flex appeal, especially for a week when we have 6 teams on a bye. I'm willing to go back, especially because Drake May has looked so good and this team just looks like they've really turned things around. So I'm willing to believe more in the Patriots offense than I am anything else. And then with that, he definitely is rising up the rankings at least.
Again, it's tough to see wide receivers go from being complete afterthoughts to all of a sudden be these weekly, wide receiver 2 starters out here. So it's nothing against Boutte. I think the fact that he's carved out the role he has and can be a weekly top 50 option is already a huge win in its own right. Again, it's just maybe pumping the brakes a little bit. There's got to be some level of regression coming for Drake May throwing deep. He just can't. No one can be this good continuously. No. It really has been wild. Kendall, on passes thrown 20 yards downfield this year, Drake May is 14 for 18 for 414 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. Just, again, Patrick Mahomes, MVP frontrunner. I get it. Drake May, though, if he's not going to be inside that top 5, hey, top 3 for my money's worth really would be madness for me. Let's talk about another wide receiver, though. Second-year former first-rounder Xavier Legette, coming off a performance where he had 9 catches for 92 yards and a touchdown. I already mentioned Andy Dalton potentially being under center here. Do you think we could see more good times ahead for the former first-rounder, Kendall?
I don't think so. I think this is fake as well. But I'm curious if you feel a different way because he just hasn't given us much production throughout his NFL career. So it's really hard for me, Ian, to say, okay, now all of a sudden we even had the game so far this season and he hasn't done much with it. And then in week 7, you see he caught 9 passes, 92 yards, and a touchdown, like you said. So I think Carolina and their passing game has shown some relevance and some spark, this season. And maybe it is Bryce Young getting injured and Andy Dalton stepping in that he could potentially be on the rise a little bit, but I still am just looking at Tetterell and McMillan. Outside of that, they really don't have a fantasy relevant wide receiver that I say, yeah, week in and week out, I'm really comfortable putting you in here. So I think this is more a flash in the pan. I'm still waiting for Jalen Coker. He's someone that I have just held on to just in case. Obviously, they're going to put him in there, and he was active this past week, but it's going to take a little while to get him back up to speed. But to me, it feels like we're going to probably get the sample size that we got from Legette for the last handful, 20 plus games that we've seen him in than the one we saw him in last week.
And that's the problem. Again, great week 7. That was cool. But weeks 1 through 6, guys, 20 targets. He caught 8 of them for 50 yards and a touchdown. So call me cautious here. Not exactly expecting the good times to keep on rolling there for Mr. Legette. Andy Dalton did throw multiple touchdowns in 3 of his 5 starts last year, but it's not a situation where he was putting up great efficiency numbers, a lowly 6.2 yards per attempt. And God kind of came out hot, but by the end of it, we were very much fine seeing Bryce Young getting back under center. Let's talk about Alec Pierce, Kendall, someone who actively led the Colts in receiving yards last year, led the NFL in yards per target and yards per reception, but mainstream media is not willing to give White Lightning the love he deserves. Caught 5 passes for 98 yards last week and even left some meat on the bone. Week high 158 unrealized air yards. We'll get into more of the sheesh beyond the box score stats later in the show, but kind of it's a situation where, for my money's worth, seeing what the Colts were able to do to the Chargers last week, so impressive. I know they had the great game against the Broncos in week 2, but we just seen Daniel Jones start to, again, move down a little bit. His yards per attempt have been decreasing each and every week. And then last week, he just came out again and looked fantastic. So I'm buying the Colts as being a legit, great, real-life team and offense. And accordingly, with Alec Pierce being this boomer bust wide receiver 4 type, and on a week like this, I think you can even squeeze him in the back part of the wide receiver 3s. Yeah, I'm buying Alec Pierce as someone I want on my fantasy bench to throw in the flex when needed.
Yes, say it louder, Ian. I'm right there with you. I like Alec Pierce this week because you said it too. You're going to have big guys that are going to be gone this week. You already were without Puka Nacua, but JSN is going to be one of them. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be another receiver. So I really like Alec Pierce. Being at that game, you knew that if they were getting ready to unload it, like just go downfield and unload that deep shot, you knew it was going to be Alec Pierce because that's what he does. And so I think he had like a 24.4 ADOT in that game. Like his average depth of target was insane. So to me, I still like him. And I think that he is in this role where, again, it's a little bit unique, right? It's going to be boom or bust, and sometimes he's not going to come down with everything that you saw. But in a game like that, he has averaged 9.5 PPR points per game. Again, that's not blowing you out of the water. It's not a super sexy number, but from someone coming off the bench where you just need a body and you need some fantasy points, I think you'll take that every day of the week, 9.5 fantasy points. So I think that's a really good mark for him. And I like him. You know, they're going to continue to go to Pittman, Downs, Tyler Warren, all that stuff for the short targets. But when we're talking about the long ones, it's going to be Alec Pierce in there. And so I think this team is legit, like you said. So to me, I say it louder, say it for the people in the back, like give Alec Pierce some respect.
And you mentioned there's going to be other parties involved. Jonathan Taylor's going to get force-fed the football on the ground as well as he should. But I think a big just concern people had understandably going into this year was A.D. Mitchell. And if he could carve out a bigger role, likely at, Alec Pierce's expense. And no, he hasn't at all. As Dwayne McFarland said last night, he's in a doghouse that has another doghouse inside it. And that is where A.D. Mitchell is right now. So Pierce, again, it's not going to be the most consistent stuff out there, but he also hasn't caught a touchdown yet this year. Now facing a Titans secondary that does have a banged up number one cornerback in L'Jarius Sneed, and also gets the burnable Pittsburgh Steelers here next in week 9. So good stuff in the near term for Alec Pierce. And no, guys, I'm not going to be ranking him as a top 20 receiver. Please don't blow all your fab on the guy or anything like that. But if you are like me and in some of these 14-team leagues where you have a couple flexes and you need to try to figure things out, again, sub 10% rostered on these, all right? We have way worse wide receivers that are way more rostered. Put some respect on Alec Pierce's name. That said, Kendall, I don't think I'm going to put more respect on Chimere Dike's name, all right? Fun game and get it. I get it. He had the 38-yard touchdown. But for me, it was just trying to go through this. And I don't want to, give the guy no respect out here. He's a rookie. Maybe he does get better. But just think about how much we don't care about the Jets passing game and just pretty much anyone other than Garrett Wilson there. And like the Titans are the 31st ranked offense in passing yards per game. Okay. So yes, Cam Ward, a little bit more, upside on a week-to-week basis. But who knows what's going on with the play calling at this point in time. I just don't want anything to do with really anyone involved in Tennessee. And I think that really is a blanket statement for the time being.
Yeah, no, it's bad. I'm with you. I don't think this is real at all. It was fun. It was a fun watch. It was nice. You get a little bit of a bump after you fire Brian Callahan and you say, okay, well, this was a little bit nicer, but it's still not nice enough, Ian, to buy into. I'm just not buying into it yet. I do think there's maybe a point at the back half of this. I can't even say middle of the season because we're almost there. Maybe back half of the season where we see a little bit more from Cam Ward. But for me, you said it. He caught 4 passes for 70 yards and a touchdown. Most of that came on that 38-yard touchdown. So to me, this was also a game where you didn't have everyone that you needed in there with Ridley. So I think this is just more of flash in the pan, fun for this week, not someone that I'm spending, if any, money on. He might be someone where after the first waivers run, and if he's not picked up, I might say, all right, I'll give it a shot, but that's 100% free. So I just wouldn't spend anything on him.
I gave him a little long look on my 32-team waivers. I will give the guy that. But again, even then, I wasn't willing to pick him up before this last week. I might do it if he is still there now. Remember, guys, it's also contingent on Calvin Ridley still being out. I have not heard a single word on this dude other than his official practice notes and then also his eventual game status. Can we get a question out there, Tennessee media? I know you're pissed off because you got to cover the Titans and your team is horrible and the organization might even be worse. So again, tough job. I get it and everything. But Kendall, this is a number one receiver making north of $90 million, and we have not heard a peep out of anything. I even went to Twitter to complain about this, hoping for someone to be like, no, Ian, you missed it. Here's an update from a few days ago. There's nothing. Guys, before every single show, I have notifications on Twitter from 32 beat writers, Schefter, Rap Sheet, so many different people, aggregators and reporters alike, to make sure I don't miss anything so I can give you guys the most up-to-date injury information and try to uncover every single stone. I have not heard a single peep on Calvin Ridley. And I know it's easy to say, who cares? It's Calvin Ridley just running cardio out there. And I get it, Kendall, but it does matter when we're in a deep enough league. Have you heard a single peep out of Calvin Ridley for the last week and a half?
Ian, this is how bad it is. This is how bad we know the Calvin Ridley injury is of not getting coverage. I just typed in Calvin Ridley injury, just a blank statement on Google. And the first and biggest thing that pops up is your recent tweet an hour ago. The last one was 4 days ago about Calvin Ridley. So that's where we're at. It's an Ian Hartitz rant on Twitter, which is always amazing. But listen, I'm with you. We've had some weird, and this is not me just trying to go after anyone, but we've had some weird just overall reporting of some of the injuries this season that has sometimes led us astray a little bit. So Calvin Ridley, where are you? Call us. What's going on? Friend of the show? You should just text him at this point, Ian. I think that's what we need to do. Get his personal number, text him, say, hey, we need you back. What are you doing? And see what he's up to.
I remember like 4 years ago, one of my favorite players in the past was a former Bengals wide receiver, Oronde Gadsden, contested catch artist, couldn't really separate, but he got cut. And like 4 weeks later, I was searching on Google News, like, all right, like, is someone interested in this dude, whatever. And yeah, the first result back was like one of my tweets talking about like what's going on with Oronde Gadsden. Had to take a look in the mirror after that one, go outside and touch some grass. So again, guys, overall with just some of these running backs and wide receivers, Rashard Smith wouldn't expect a takeover, but making the most out of his opportunities. And again, just the fact he was able to get some real non-gadget touches without Kareem Hunt is good to see. Just make sure you monitor Kareem Hunt, and again, that injury that he may or may not be dealing with after week 7. Kayshon Boutte, solid boomer bust wide receiver 4. That said, feeling a little bit better, I would say, about Alec Pierce, just in terms of his consistency and better chance for more targets, particularly while Josh Downs is out. Xavier Legette and Chimere Dike are the guys we are calling more so Fugazi's, not going to be going too hard in the paint for on the waiver wire. So good stuff there on running backs and wide receivers, Kendall. Now, though, let's fix some of those onesie spots ahead of the bye. Time for some bye week doctor. It's Bye-Mageddon, which means we have the Cardinals, Lions, Jaguars, Raiders, Rams, and Seahawks all on bye. And accordingly, we got some work to do to make sure those quarterback, tight end, and even DST rooms are good to go. Kendall, let's start things off with quarterback. Again, Kyler Murray or Jacoby Brissett if you're that desperate. Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence, Matthew Stafford, Sam Darnold are all going to be out of the picture. We already talked up Joe Flacco. I do think he deserves to be the number one potential addition. Again, only rostered 5% of ESPN leagues, 12% of Yahoo formats, so that's great. I will say the probably not in your league, pal. I get it. But the man who you should be trying to get, if at all possible, Jackson Dart, guys, still only owned in 43% of ESPN leagues and 42% of Yahoo leagues. Kendall, we were talking about it last night on the pod. I mean, Joanne and I, we're in. We think this guy has it. And yeah, bad fourth quarter interception. He's not perfect, but he's doing all this with Wan'Dale Robinson as number one option. So again, so fantasy friendly with the way he's running around. Jackson Dart, if available, 100% should be your bye week streamer.
If he's available, go and get him. There should be no reason why he's still out there. He's running into brick walls with Cam Scatterboo before games, and I guess that's really just sparked something in them and the fans, and they say, yeah, let's just go mess up everyone. I took them in Survivor. No, I took the Broncos in Survivor, Ian, and I actually thought I was dead and in the water. I was like, there's no way that this Giants team is going to come in and do this. So respect to the Giants and what they've been able to do, and they face Philadelphia next week, which is, again, a divisional rematch, and Dart in that last one threw for 195 and had over, I want to say 50, definitely over 50 rushing yards in that game as well. So we've seen what they're able to do. And it's no longer, I don't know, Ian, to me, it's no longer looking at this schedule and saying, well, this is the hardest strength of schedule in the league. It's still facing these tough teams, but this Giants team for the last 2 games that they've given us against the Eagles and the Broncos, they've shown that they can show up. So I don't think this is an easy team that you can just bet against every single week either. And that means we can't bet against Jackson Dart now anyways.
Kudos to you, though, for still being alive in those Survivor streets.
Hey,
I had the unfortunate, lost the Cardinals in that Titans game, which was sweet. And I felt really like, I got screwed, Kendall. That's how I was feeling. And then on Tuesday, I was at, my local Buffalo Wild Wings, and I mentioned the bartender, like, yeah, I lost Survivor by picking the Cardinals. At that point, I was like, what did I just say? I picked the Cardinals in Survivor and thought that was going to go okay. No one to blame but the man in the mirror there. But yes, guys, Jackson Dart, most fantasy points per start among any quarterback right now in terms of just rushing. Again, not Lamar Jackson out there, but man, with how much he's running, he might as well be, at least in terms of the box score. QB 10, QB 19, QB 3 in pre-Monday Night Football, QB 2 through 4 starts. Great stuff from him. I would say the break glass, in case of emergency option, if you can't get Flacco, can't get Dart, would be Marcus Mariota, again, with Jaden Daniels looking more so, I would just say on the doubtful side of questionable, just expecting him to probably miss a week or two with that hamstring injury. So Mariota, Kendall, he's only had 2 actual starts over these past 2 seasons, but there were 2 games last year in week 18. And then in that, I think, Carolina game where Jaden Daniels got pulled and then hurt pretty quickly. In these 4 essential starts, he's pulled off QB9, QB6, and only 1 dud at QB19 finishes because Mariota, even in his, more so early slate, can still run the football. And that is what we were looking for at the end of the day. So Marcus Mariota, again, would be that 1% rostered option if you really do need so. And for Jaden Daniels fantasy managers, I do think that is probably going to be your easiest way to manage that injury. Let's talk about tight end because, again, as you mentioned earlier, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I agree. I think that Marcus Mariota, he got you 36.52 PPR points during that week 4 start when combined. So at least he gives you the ability to run. And if you have Jaden Daniels, just pick him up just in case.
Mariota, unfortunately, kind of blew that second chance starting job with the Falcons, but he has been a quality backup. Certainly don't think we'll be seeing him leaving the NFL anytime soon. Over on tight end, again, Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer managers, you guys all have stuff to figure out. And that should be Oronde Gadsden, if at all possible. That said, if not Kendall, it does seem like Theo Johnson could be a bit of an option here. I know the tip touchdown last week was a little bit fluky, and they've also been using Daniel Bellinger a bit here. But end of the day, 4 weeks since Malik Neighbors was out, we've seen Theo work as a tight end 14, tight end 3, tight end 35, and then tight end 8 pre-Monday Night Football. With no Neighbors and with Darius Slayton, I'm not sure when he's coming back, it does seem like Theo can be Jackson Dart's number 2 pass game option, which, as we're finding out, isn't too shabby for fantasy football business.
It's not too bad. Shout out to Jackson Dart, just giving us some fantasy relevant guys to go get off waivers too. Who would have thought going into week 8 that it would have been just like that? But yeah, I like Theo Johnson. He might be more rostered depending on what kind of league you're in, but I just think he has solid usage. And when you consider that he's had the 3 end zone targets and the touchdowns that you just mentioned, I think he's worth a pickup. It's going to be gross. This is what happens when 6 teams go on a bye and you're looking around and you're saying, well, this isn't Trey McBride. This isn't, the guys that I usually get to start. But I do think Theo Johnson especially is someone where we've liked this team. They've been on the up and up and they've been scoring points and then fantasy points here. And so I do like the Theo Johnson call out.
Other note, someone who, again, a little bit more of an injury contingency, but Colson Loveland, guys, only rostered in 22% of leagues right now. And we do have a Cole Kmet back injury that, again, kept him out of that game. So already kind of talked about the Bears schedule coming up. So yeah, Colson Loveland could also be someone who benefits. Real quick, Ken, let's go through some DST options because, again, a handful that are going to be on bye. I think the Falcons should be the priority pickup, okay? They're only rostered in 19% of ESPN leagues. They get to face a Miami Dolphins team that is led by Tua Tagovailoa and led probably should be used lightly because at this point, 10 interceptions on the season. That is tied with Geno Smith for the most in the league. The offensive line hasn't exactly been amazing as it is. And just this is a team that just seems on the verge of quitting on the season. I've been saying that since week 1. So I do think they've stayed a little bit more competitive than, maybe people like myself thought. But hey, in the Falcons' credit, they've also been a really good defense. Only give up 14 points to the Bills, giving up 20 to the 49ers. They got worn down a little bit there at the end, but they've been creating a lot of havoc. They got some true ballers in that secondary. And just overall, guys, this is a defense that in terms of total yards really is one of the best in the league. So Falcons against the Dolphins, kind of would be my go-to. Also have the Bears versus the Ravens if Lamar is out, and then the Bills versus the Panthers coming off a bye. They're a little bit more own. But Falcons defense, I would say one of the more pleasant surprises of the season so far.
Yeah, I really like the Falcons call out. I saw that in the show sheet and then I immediately went to make sure that they weren't just floating out there on the waiver wire just in case I had a worse defense. But you said it. It's Tua Tagovailoa. This team just feels like, Ian, they're not playing for their head coach, that's for sure, for the Dolphins. And so you're kind of just waiting to see what happens with this team and when they just completely implode. They said that Tua Tagovailoa is going to be the quarterback this week, and for the last 2 games, he's got 6 picks and it's just he's thrown for a combined 305 yards. So if you're looking at anyone, the Falcons are just a really good call out. And they're just, they even held Mac Jones to 152 passing yards. They've looked good, genuinely.
Genuinely indeed. So again, guys, Falcons, Bears if Lamar is out, and then the Bills, 38% roster in ESPN going up against Andy Dalton. Those would be my 3 recommended DST streamers. With that said, let's go ahead and just kind of put a bow on week 7. It's time for our Sheesh Report. Near missed touchdowns and missed opportunities suck, and it can be hurtful to go ahead and look back at them the following day. But that said, Kendall, they make us stronger, and we got to try to cover up these scars. Know what happened, consume it, realize it, and then move on. So let's get into some sheesh, starting off with players who were tackled at the 1 yard line and then did not score a touchdown on the same drive. Shorter list than normal this week, which is actually a nice breath of fresh air. But Rams running back Kyron Williams, Bears running back DeAndre Swift, Commanders RB Jeremy Nichols, Xavier Scott also in there, Cortland Sutton, and Colby Parkinson. So again, if you had those players lost by less than 6 points, I am sorry, but that is what fantasy football is all about. The one call out here that might be actionable on moving forward, Kendall, is the fact that this has now happened to Kyron Williams, a league high 4 times out here. I mean, once they get inside the 5 yard line, it really does seem like more than ever Matthew Stafford is starting to look Devontae Adams' way. And hey, as someone who certainly has plenty of Kyron Williams, be a lot cooler if we just turn around and hand the ball off a little bit more.
Remember when we said that the connection, the chemistry isn't quite there yet with Devontae Adams and then Matthew Stafford, and then we just had what we had yesterday, and we said, "Oh, okay, never mind, it's there. We don't have to." They said Puka Nacua, we don't have him. That's fine. So it looks like the connection's back, and I'm so sorry, Kyron Williams managers, because that means you're probably just going to continue to be unlucky, unfortunately.
Again, luckily it's a good enough Rams offense, and they're going to be on bye here anyway. I get it, but good enough offense to have plenty of opportunities to go around near the goal line. That should help Kyron. Not like we're going to be nosediving him down the ranks, but yeah, guys, Devontae Adams, 11 targets inside the 10 yard line this season. That is 4 more than any other player, and only Patrick Mahomes has more pass attempts than Matthew Stafford inside the 10 yard line. So honestly, kind of reminds me of like when Tom Brady and then Aaron Rodgers were kind of going back and forth, in those later years of their respective careers, and just they get inside the 5 yard line. It's like, I'm not handing the ball off. I got some passing touchdown records I'm trying to break. Good for Matthew Stafford, but again, not so good for Kyron Williams. Last up, though, guys, want to talk about some unrealized air yards. As always, this is a nerdy way of basically trying to quantify the total distance covered on incomplete targets. So if we had someone get 4 incomplete screen passes, it goes in the box score as over 4 in terms of trying to catch the ball. But if someone's also getting 4 50-plus yard bombs downfield that, again, are loaded with fantasy football potential, that also only goes down the box score as 4 incomplete targets, not with unrealized air yards. Accordingly, Kendall, we actually had 10 different players rack up north of 75 unrealized air yards, led by Alec Pierce, again, 158. That is a huge number, and even had a good day for himself, so meat on the bone there. Parker Washington and Troy Franklin had 154. Josh Reynolds at 141. Rashid Shaheed and Justin Jefferson just a little bit over 100. And then Lab McConkey, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, and Arian Smith rounding things out. I want to ask you how you feel about Jalen Waddle, because again, going up against Cleveland, big time Mother Nature induced game, not ideal. And also the vibes around Miami and Tua aren't great right now. But man, just seeing what Waddle was doing the 2 previous weeks, I still fully believe this guy is an awesome real life wide receiver. But what are your thoughts on Waddle rest of the season?
Yeah, I think he's a good rest. I think rest of season he's fine, but just man, Ian, these dud games are getting me chopped in guillotine leagues. So totally different than fantasy, I know, but it's just so brutal when you have Jalen Waddle in this Dolphins pass game. I know that the weather impacted it so much, so you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt and say it can't be like this every week, right? And I'm hoping that Tua Tagovailoa gets that message too, because when you throw for just 100 yards and 3 picks, yeah, Waddle's not going to get much, and so. 1 of 4 targets, 15 yards, 2.5 fantasy points, literally chopped everywhere. Not everywhere, but in a lot of leagues because of that. But I think rest of season, I'm okay with it. They got the Falcons. Again, we talked about the Falcons being a good defense to pick up. But I just think this is just going to be an offense that we don't necessarily trust all the time. But it might be a situation, Ian, at least for me in some of these deeper leagues, like I just have to start him. I don't really have better options out there. And it does, we never want injuries, but it did help with Tyreek Hill, less mouths to feed going out there. So I'm going to keep firing him up. But man, this was absolute 2.5 fantasy points, and we could have gone out there. Like, come on, we could have gone out there. We could have just lined up, and we would have at least done a little bit more. I want to say, I don't know. It's just so frustrating. But I'm rolling with him. He's going to be fine.
It's just unfortunate because I'm old enough to remember his rookie year in 2021 when he wasn't this just only field stretcher and he didn't always need pristine weather to go ahead and do his thing. They actually used him a ton underneath and just got him the ball in cool design ways, and he did good things with it because he's Jalen freaking Waddle. He's really good at football. Just haven't seen that same, attention, I guess, from Mike McDaniel and this more modern Dolphins offense. Again, Malik Washington's fine. Devon Achane's doing his thing out there, but I just don't know how you can go through a game and get clearly your best wide receiver, Jalen Waddle, only 1 offensive touch. But hey, I am not a doctor or offensive coordinator, so I will leave that up to the professionals. But hey, guys, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Fantasy Life Show. We appreciate you tuning in. As always, if you like the show, then please like the show. Always helps us out when you hit that subscribe button as well. So for K-Dog, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everybody.